So sometimes you just kind of have to trust that things are going to end up where they're supposed to end up, right? Welcome to This Life Reconsidered, and my name is Janina. On this channel, I focus on personal development, self-care, and navigating that work-life integration. And then there's this whole just trying to make sense of the lessons and things that life teaches us. So if you think that's the kind of stuff that you're interested in learning about, you may want to hit that subscription button lower right. Lower right, whatever. You may want to hit the subscription button. As I got to thinking about this video, I think it was because I was vividly recalling the emotions that I was feeling and the sense of regret that had consumed me after everything that I'd went through. It was almost like I was trying to find like all of the things that I could have done or all the things that could have been fixed and corrected if I had tried things differently. It's like you always try to like look for like the loopholes and the imperfections that you could have fixed. And that's really, really naive and wishful thinking. And I think that that was something that I really let get the best of me in the throes of all of this. Now, that all said, I would say that as time passed and I started to kind of really make much more logical sense out of the reality that there was only so much I could have done, I started to kind of land on a couple of real kind of core ideas on why regret is not only pointless, but why you don't benefit from regret, but because you are kind of supposed to walk a certain kind of path to end up to a certain endpoint. And I think I've said a couple of these ideas in some earlier videos, but I don't think I've ever kind of highlighted this in the point of why regret is specifically kind of non-essential. So that said, let me just kind of get into a couple of these really major ideas. And you can do with this information whatever you're going to do with it. But as a person that has stewed in a lot of regret, I like to think that a couple of this logic makes sense. So point one, you can only make decisions with the information you have. Now, for the things that you can't control, you can only do as much as you can with what it is. So like the reality is, like, for example, in the case of something like a medical event or a breakup or anything really that messes with your life or messes with your emotions, you can only do so much with that. Like that incident is out of your hands. In the cases that you decide that you're going to either quit a job or you're going to leave something or you're going to make this major shift, you can only decide to kind of basically make the decisions based with the information that you have. So if you know what you have is an emotion that you're not feeling happy with, or there's some disturbing things that are at play that are going to impact your stability or your safety or your happiness, your job is to make the most informed choices. At least for me, with the case of the stroke and recovery, the only thing that I was able to do is make the decision to kind of, make the adjustments that I needed to make with my medical care, to take the leave of absence that I needed to take for work, or whatever those things. I had to make decisions based on the life event that I was being faced with. And that's going to vary on a couple of different levels, and I'm making a very broad assumption for no matter what kind of big milestone is, but the headline here is that you can only react to what you can react to. So once you know what is happening, you have to make those choices based on the immediate. You can't make choices for things that haven't happened. You can only make choices or decisions or take actions based on what you know. So regretting and doubting and after the choices have been made are pointless. The point is you're reacting to the choices that you had right in front of you based on the situation you're dealing with immediately. Point 2 is that you have been faced with this circumstance and this action for a reason. The reality is that if you're being brought to that point, it is likely because you are kind of now at kind of supposed to be walking that point. I don't necessarily, while I believe that there are a lot of really unfortunate things that happen and things that are non-essential that we're forced to deal with, I find it hard to believe that those things aren't supposed to eventually get you to some type of point. And the reason that that's important is because I think that we have a tendency to think of these things as isolated moments, as opposed to moments that we have to navigate to prepare for something else even bigger. And you could think that this is a little big universe at work kind of situation, and it kind of is to a degree, but those things are navigating to something else. And sometimes you probably couldn't have gotten to that next step if you weren't facing this particular kind of next step. I guess point 3 is the idea that if you're kind of navigating a certain experience for a reason, maybe you just kind of have to kind of like trust that journey, and that maybe that also feels kind of like that's really difficult. And I will say, as a person that doesn't always trust, this is a very, very difficult concept to navigate. But I believe it because I think now that I'm a few years removed out from everything that I went through, I can only now start to see and learn from everything that's happened. And I don't think I would be this version of myself stronger and much more in tune with what I want professionally, emotionally, and things like that if I hadn't have had those things happen. I would probably be much more tolerant of nonsense, and I would probably just kind of grumble through things. But now I feel much more purpose driven. And a lot of that is because, I'm in a different headspace. And I've also decided what I do have room for and what I won't tolerate, And honestly, like I've spent a lot of time agonizing over a lot of the things that I couldn't control, but realizing that regret was not only just kind of a pointless emotion, but that I was regretting things even though I was well as informed as I could have been to make the choices that I made, and that I was still supposed to be feeling something in order to get to a particular endpoint. And while I don't always love everything, I don't love anything that is upsetting and that is emotionally taxing. No one does. But, as you think about kind of everything that you're dealt, you're dealt things because you can somehow navigate and get through it. So it's all a test of whether or not you kind of have the ability to kind of trust yourself and kind of get out on the other side. I am not kind of this kind of all-knowing kind of guru, but I just feel a little more confident trusting the universe and the cards that I'm being dealt, because I'm still on a path. It's and I'm being given much more clarity. So I don't know. I think that we as humans tend to kind of stew on a lot of things, and that's just instinctive. But I think we should probably also allow ourselves the ability to be a little bit more trusting that this is all part of an end goal. So as long as we're trusting on that, then I think the rest of it is going to kind of have to happen the way it happens. I don't know. I mean, what do you think about regret? Are there any things that you have kind of regretted particularly and wish you could make sense of? What kind of mindsets have you kind of tried to adopt when things are kind of eating at you? I find that I'm in focusing on seeing the glass half full. I think the value is to make me ultimately a stronger person, but I'm really curious. I would love to get your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments, and maybe we can have another video talking about, how to kind of adopt positive mindsets so as not to be consumed by regret. I don't know. This is one of those topics that especially fascinates me. And I'm sure I'll probably make some content like this over time, but I look forward to getting your thoughts, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks.